Welcome to All Things Social Security. My name is Stephanie Joy of Joy Disability. I am a Social Security disability attorney, and I would like to invite you to watch our daily video tips on the Social Security disability and SSI claims process each day at the new time of noon Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube on this channel. And on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have our live Q&A live stream. So you are welcome to join that as well. Ask your questions, get there on time, and you'll be one of the first answered. Thanks so much and have a great day. Enjoy the video. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. I hope you are all well. Stephanie Joy here with Joy Disability and All Things Social Security. Let's go over, because it happened this week, the inquiry was made to me by someone I don't know, but it was someone who really wanted to know if she was on track with her thinking and if it would be appropriate to take a certain action, et cetera, et cetera. It had to do with the fee going to her lawyer after a win. Keep in mind, the person really just, I got the impression, just really wanted to know, like, am I out of line here? Or this seems like, an untoward bill. So I gave the straight up as I see it, purely my opinion, but it's kind of based on fact and how these kind of contingent agreements work and why the SSA uses it, as I understand it. So the deal was the person did win the claim. Now, apparently there was a first lawyer that the claimant was not happy with because the claimant, in her opinion, thought he didn't do something she thought he should do. And I think she did get denied on initial, and she got rid of the first attorney and got a different one. Okay, so that's good that you're able to get another one. Sometimes they won't do that if they know there's a prior attorney. They're definitely not into attorney shopping or anything like that. But that doesn't mean every time you want to get rid of your attorney, it's attorney shopping. It's sometimes you're just like, no, I really can't even work with this person. And likewise, probably the attorney's feeling the same way. So I believe the win was on reconsideration, and therefore within probably 6 months or something like that, the second attorney was involved when the case won. Now, the claimant really doesn't think that the attorney did enough to warrant what turned out to be a full cap fee, which means the back benefits were over $36,000. So the attorney got $9,200. I think the back benefits might have been closer to $50,000. Attorney got $9,200. Claimant doesn't feel the attorney worked for $9,200. So this is my response to this, because I'm sure other people feel this way. There are some times when the win is quick. And because there's back benefits, because maybe you delayed in filing, and so they've accumulated, and between you and your attorney, you secured all the way back to, quite a while. Despite the quick win, the back benefits of 12 months before the date of application, perhaps a healthy work history, income-wise, brought you to a hefty back benefits, which is great. So I hate to see us, turning over the tarnished coin or whatever, but, sometimes, and I think it's natural that a person who doesn't really maybe understand the nature of what a contingent agreement is will say, gosh, I know he didn't work $9,200 worth. So here's my response, and I'm just going to throw out some thoughts there. What I think is really important to understand is the contingent agreement. First of all, in Social Security, it's more than a contingent agreement protection for claimants. Contingent agreements are not for the protection of the lawyer. In fact, it is designed to buy product by protecting the client. Screw the lawyer, despite what could be dozens of hours of unpaid. Diligent work, everything top notch, and it can be unpayable. Okay, so the contingent agreement means you do not have a bill if you do not win your case. And in the SSA world, the contingent agreement, which is 25% of back benefits only, not prospective benefits, just back benefits, is capped at $9,200. So if you have $50,000 of back benefits, the attorney at 25% is not going to get 12,000 something, right? What would that be? 13,000? I don't know. Between $12,000 and $13,000 is not going to get that because it's capped at 9,200. This is irrespective of if the attorney has put in years of work, 100 hours, 200 hours, it doesn't matter. It's a 9,200 cap. Okay. I've never, ever actually seen a claimant, whether it was my claimant or another, ask to pay more. Hey, I know you worked for 5 years on my case. I know you got the cap. You didn't get really more than that, even though the case went on for such a long time. Can I pay you another 10,000? I've never seen someone ask if they could do that. Number one, the attorneys are not allowed to accept that. Neither are the non-attorney reps. We're all under the same rule. So if anyone ever did try to get you to pay outside of what the SSA approved in writing, it would be, I would say, illegal. It would be an ethical violation. It would be a Social Security violation. It would be a plethora of things. Now, a non-attorney rep might not have any repercussions if they did that, and I don't know any. None in my personal sphere would ever do such a thing. Of course, attorneys have bars to answer to. So even though our bars are not federal, they're state, we still have to answer to them while we do this federal work. So that would be, in my estimation, probably a very egregious violation, ethics violation. Okay, so we know contingent fee agreement, only when you win. If you don't win, despite that person, that attorney working tons of hours, outlaying monies, hiring staff to assist, all that stuff, you still have no bill because you didn't prevail. Now, if you prevail, and let's say you prevailed, and this happens, guys, and despite the fact that you stopped working 3 years ago because of your impairments, the SSA decided that you're disabled. However, there was not enough evidence till last month. There just wasn't. Then there's zero back benefits because there's a 5-month waiting period. This is SSD we're talking about now. And the attorney would have zero as 25% of back benefits capped at $9,200. Zero. Now, when that happens, there is the opportunity to do the other method of fee prescribed by the SSA under their rules, which is the fee petition route. I'll try to get to that a little later. But going back to it, is it unfair if there is a $9,200 bill that's going to come out of your back benefits, usually automatically withdrawn by the SSA before they send you the balance, that goes to the attorney that you are pretty confident did not, in your opinion, pretty confident, did not put in $9,200 worth of work on your case? I suppose that would depend on the billable hour. What is the attorney billable hour? Are they $500 an hour, $400 an hour, $600 an hour, $300 an hour? Do they give a discount to $300 because it's a disability case when they do their fee petitions? What is it? Secondly, I think you don't know that, and you really don't know what was done behind the scenes. You just don't know. Like, I can't speak for others because I do know there are representatives out there that don't do squat behind the scenes on initial and recon, and even on with a hearing. At best, they make sure that records are ordered and sometimes don't do that very well. But for many of us, the time on initial and recon, while we're babysitting to see what's getting in the file from the SSA side, submitting our own things, communicating with the DDS, we're also, if it's like me, we have a procedure where all along the case, we are feeding the beast of the future brief for the ALJ hearing. Because in my mind, to do a proper job, on initial, you're not just looking at initial. You're doing everything that needs to be done initial, but you're preparing everything for then a stronger recon if the case does not win on initial. And as you know, most cases do not win on initial. And that's not going to change no matter how hard you work. It can definitely, some do, and they usually only happen with work, but give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I had to interrupt to take a call from my daughter. Okay, so where was I? You don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So you might assume your lawyer is didn't do that, and maybe they didn't. I will say that I think the most proper ones do it because it really makes a difference in terms of getting wins on initial, getting wins on recon. A lot of cases, no matter what you do, are going to have to go to a hearing. That's a fact. But and then depending on what kind of cases you pick, some of those are not going to be able to win. But what you do on initial can lay up a stronger recon, increase those chances of winning. Instead of having a 15% recon rate, you could have a 55% recon reversal. So there's a lot that can be helped by doing work on initial. And then likewise, recon is really important because you might not have a lot of time on ALJ during the ALJ wait for hearing to get certain things done. We use it as such a period of time to nag the clients on where they should be strengthening their medical treatment records or follow up, where it's been kind of slacky, what more they could be doing. On top of, again, continuing to feed the beast of the future brief for the hearing so that it is done fully with information, not rushed at the end. And by the way, briefs are not even mandatory. I don't know how many people do them in this profession. I wonder if it's less than 50%. 50% might not do a brief for the judge. We like to do it. I do them on every single case for more than one reason. Some judges might like it. I don't know that all do, but universally, I need it. I feel like I need it. It's got me honed in on that case so much that you know it. You know it so well by the time you get to hearing. So to me, it's also a way of getting a case under my skin by consistently just working on that. But if new things come in, it's going where it needs to go. The relevant parts, when you see something important, that's going in the brief. You're not putting in every detail that's immaterial or redundant in the brief. Okay, so there could be stuff going on. But the reality is, the whole point about the contingent fee agreement is that you're both agreeing to something. You are agreeing to pay that person not 25% of back benefits or capped at 9,200 with a smile on your face and a gratitude that you won, hopefully. And the attorney has agreed to accept only 9,200 despite when he has worked more or less than 9,200. I mean, you can have again, a multi-year case and make $1,000. So you know you're in the red. You lost money, but the satisfaction and the personal fulfillment, personal and professional fulfillment of having helped somebody who was disabled from working and that has that bit of unfortune, helping them to have a little bit of fortune thrown back at them, is part of the reward. Granted, it doesn't keep the lights on, it doesn't keep staff hired, and it doesn't pay the mortgage, but it is invaluable. Okay, so the attorney agrees to take nothing if they don't win, despite all the work. And that includes when they've been working their took us off and you have a reticent claimant who hasn't been pulling their weight. Now, some of us will eventually have it up to here and be like, gotta leave because you're not really being a part of the team. But, when someone's trying their best, but they're still not coming forward, you stick with it and you know that your chances are deteriorated to win because of that. And you've already agreed that, yes, I understand I'll be working for free to try to get this person over the hump despite that. Okay, so contingent, agree to take nothing if you don't prevail. And then when there is something and you do prevail, agree to take less than what you worked for when that happens, which is probably the vast majority of the time. And ask for a higher fee. You settle with what that is. If you have a case that took, years and you make $1,000, you accept it with grace and you move on because that was the agreement. And the importance to me of the contingent agreement is that the claimant can rest assured that they're never going to have a bill bigger than 9,200. It is never going to come out of their pocket. It's out of found money, if you want to look at it that way. And that's not a bad way to look at it because if you didn't win, it wouldn't be yours, right? And the alternative, this is the last part I'm going to say. If you want to refute, and I think you can, I don't know that it's going to go far, but you can, I believe the opportunity then becomes the fee petition. And be careful what you wish for. A fee petition does not have a cap on it. So that person, that lawyer or that non-attorney rep is presumably going to be putting in every bloody hour they work that you are unaware of because the stress is supposed to be on them to get that done and not to be shared with you. It's their part of their job and their profession, not for you to worry about and not for them to spend time, valuable time, explaining it to you. So if you ask for you refute it and then you say, I want you. Be careful what you wish for because you'll be surprised how much labor hours everything takes. Do you have any idea how many times his office sat on hold with SSA and DDS? Do you know how many times they checked into your electronic file? Do you know how long they reviewed your paperwork? And this would be true even if they're not the type like us that work with you to draft up your function report based on your information to make sure it's responsive and accurate and in all the proper ways. I do believe the other attorneys that don't do that and just have you do it yourself and send it in, nonetheless, do take a look at it. We can discuss how I don't really agree with not working on it with your client, but that's a topic for a different day. There is a lot that goes into a case, even for those that don't do that much. If they did an appeal, that's probably a few hours. They had discussions with staff. They, like I said, presumably keep popping into that electronic file to see what's needed, where it's going, and to communicate with the adjudicator. If they do not, and if they document all that stuff, you're going to easily, what if they have like a $400, let's just say $400 billable hour? Because now it's billable hour. You asked for it, right? Fee petition, billable hour. It doesn't take that many hours to hit $9,200 and there is no cap. So if that billable hour easily becomes far more than $9,200, I think it can go without getting extra eyeballs on it. $15,000 can be ordered on a fee petition by the SSA. And I think if it's going to go over 15, then someone else has to look at it up there, I believe. But again, be careful what you wish for. Now, another issue in this particular question was the prior attorney, I think it was the prior attorney withdrew or was terminated. Doesn't really matter which side, you do it or they do it. I don't believe there was a waiver, meaning a waiver of fee. So wouldn't the second attorney had to have done fee petition? I agree with that. That's generally how it goes. So claimant is saying, shouldn't there have been a fee petition on that basis and they should not have paid him $9,200? I agree, unless the other attorney did eventually do a fee waiver and the claimant just didn't know about it. How would she know if she can't get into the electronic file if he didn't send her a copy? Don't know that he would just do that of his own volition, but who knows? Perhaps he did. Or perhaps the SSA did make a mistake. So what do you do about it, though? You want that fee petition I just described to you, that he's going to put in all of his work and his staff's work, mind you, and at a lower rate, I believe. And now potentially the earlier attorney is going to put in their fee petition, and now you got two attorneys' fees that got to be paid with no cap of $9,200. I just say, and yes, I'm biased, presumably, although I don't think I'm saying this with conflict. I am an attorney and I rely on those fees. And I would be a little annoyed if someone, did that to me. Now, granted, yes, I work hard on my cases. However, I have early wins because I work very hard, and sometimes this good fortune blesses us all. But, you want the contingent if there's going to be a high fee and a lot of work, and then you don't want it when you're so fortunate that you went earlier. It's not the right way to look at it, I don't think. And yeah, I know it might be easier to be judgy, and I get it when you really have a strong feeling, and you could be very right that the attorney did very little work. However, that's kind of crossing into something that you could be very wrong about. And from a personal perspective, I do think the better part of grace is to say, I agreed to this. I'm not going to renege on what I agreed on, which was the $9,200 contingent fee if we win. You won. You won it. And I just think you could regret, based on the rules. Did you hear that thump? That was a big, hefty black lat that just plopped out behind me. That's Buddy. So I just caution you. It could come bite you in the butt if you do it. If you are mistaken and that representative did work hard, it is so demoralizing. I had one person once who, mental illness, we went all the way through hearing and we did prevail, and it was a younger person. So I took the case. This is back when I used to have less balance amongst the different categories of cases that I insist upon now. And I knew it. I knew there was a high chance of losing, but I knew this person was disabled because of the mental conditions. So I took the case and we did win. This is several years ago. And literally, when we spoke on the phone right after, like when we all got back home and stuff, this was an in-person, we're speaking on the phone. And by the way, I should say I got a ticket in Newark, New Jersey that day for driving down the wrong way. It was after being detoured through floods and stuff. Whatever year that was, it was before COVID. But I remember thinking, not only did I get a ticket, but then this lady, she says, now what are we going to do about your fee? And I said, and my alerts went up right away. I said, you don't have to worry about the fee because the SSA rules already take care of it and they're going to handle it. And then she says, well, I really did all of the work. I almost fell over backwards. I had a really hard time not losing my temper. She could tell I was very, very angry. But I tried to be professional about it. It was hurtful. I was like, it was such a slap in the face. I can't even tell you. It really put a bad taste in my mouth, and it made me regret even representing her. And that's unfortunate. And I think her mouth went off as part of her mental illness, the lack of filter and such. So I got over it in good time. But of course, the SSA sent me in my face. It wasn't a big deal. And by the way, I don't think it was even a full fee. I mean, it wasn't like even up to the cap. But I think she just thought, well, maybe you should get like $500. I don't know what she thought. And by the way, Newark was 2 hours away from me. $20 for parking. It was just really distasteful, lacking in grace. I think she even apologized by the end of the conversation, but it was because she could tell I was ticked off. But it was disturbing, and I'm tougher skin now because now I'll just be like, so sorry, too bad. Ching. Seriously, because I think it is when it comes to someone doing that to me and the amount of work I put in, and gosh forbid, and it's true that there are cases that win faster and cases that take longer. How many actually do you work exactly 9,200? How many do you work $1,000 worth and you only get paid 9,200? How many do you work, if you're counting 3,000, but you can't, there's if you're going to be doing contingent fee with a 25% cap, a 25% and a cap, you cannot be doing it that way. That would defeat the whole purpose because then you have to be willing to say, if it's going to be a $30,000 bill, I'll pay it. And nobody's going to do that. Claimants don't do that. And nor would I expect them to, because this is what we agreed to. I agreed to be cut off at the knees at 9,200. So, and I may as well throw in that we went for 13 years without an increase in the cap. It was like 5,300 for the longest time. 13 years. Inflation went up substantially over those 13 years. And then they finally bumped it up $700 to 6,000. Woo, we were all kind of like, what? And then it went to 7,200. That was still insufficient. And then in quicker fashion. And then what was it in 2024? They upped it to 9,200, trying to catch up for all of the lack of COLA that they have and not doing it manually for us, causing many, many people to leave the field. Certainly all the hardworking people. Yeah, you might get your factory outlet types that don't do any work anyway. So whether it's 5,000 or 9,000, it's not really going to matter because when you have a million cases, none of which do you actually work on, right? It doesn't matter. You can win 10% of those and let the other 90% rot because that's your ethics and still walk away a very wealthy company, individual, whatever it is. But anyway, I don't work that way. I understand the frustration when you feel like someone didn't do squat and got what you think is a windfall, but just know it goes the other way too. It goes the other way, and the claimant is protected on what would be a very huge bill by the fact that it's capped at 9,200. So anyway, so I put this in writing to this very thoughtful person who was really wanting to know. I hope I didn't offend her. I tried to say, listen, this is going to come out in text. It could seem harsh, but this is what you got to think about. And I said, because I do think it's a thing you have to understand why there's a contingent fee. It's not because we want it. We would love it to be where they just withhold the back benefits. We do people in general would like this, practitioners. We could send our big fat bill and it just gets paid. No. There is protections that are only for the sake of the claimant. The only blessing we have from it is that it is automatically withheld. And to be honest with you, if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be practicing this. I just couldn't do it because I can't bill people. It's not something I could do. Anywho, I wanted to share that with you because I know a lot of people probably think the same thing when they see a bill. They're like, oh, I could have had an extra 9,200, or maybe they should have gotten 1,000 and I could have 8,200 back in my pocket on top of the, 40,000 or whatever I got. I get it. Everyone wants more money, not less. But when you think about why there's a contingent and what the alternative was, and you bought that insurance by doing the contingent fee. By the way, I don't think you're required to do the contingent fee. I think you could say, no, bill me. Now, if that was the case, keep in mind, you'd probably have a $15,000 retainer because if it's going to be billable, we have to do the fee petition. We want to make sure, at least the 15,000 is sitting in there to pay us when we get the fee petition amount, whatever it is, granted by the SSA. So just you have to understand the purpose of a contingent, the purpose of a cap, and how it's all in favor of the claimants to the detriment of the practitioners. And this is why there's not a ton of good ones out there that do it like they live it, breathe it, eat it, because you have to be very, very diligent. And when you are, and you're proactive and you're diligent and you work like yours, you get that really high win rate. So you do not have to treat people like a factory outlet, right? You could support yourself and do just fine by putting in that time and effort. Okay. All right. Over and out. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.